Thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon from Oslo, or good morning, wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Yasmin Afina, researcher from the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's session on responsible AI in security, governance, risks, and innovation. For those who are joining us in person, may I please highly encourage you to come to the front to this beautiful almost round table to allow us to have a free-flowing round table discussion, because this session forms part of our project related to the round table on AI security and ethics. And in the spirit of having a round table, I do highly encourage everyone in the room who have just joined us today to join us in the front, because I would like this to be very interactive and highly engaging. And for those who are joining online, thank you very much for joining us online wherever you are. And as we are using Zoom, I do encourage you to use the raise hand function if you would like to take the floor, as again, this is a very highly interactive discussion. So again, my name is Yasmin Afina, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by three excellent speakers who, for those who are in the room, we do not see them yet, but for those online, you will see them. Dr. Jin He from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, Michael Karimian from Microsoft, and Dr. Alex Idru from the ICRC. And before we get into this, into key remarks from our excellent panelists, I would like to spend 5 minutes to introduce you a little bit to the Roundtable for AI Security and Ethics and my institute, the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research. So at a glance, UNIDIR is an autonomous institution within the United Nations. You can think of us like a think tank within the UN ecosystem. We're independent from the Secretariat, and we've been established in 1980 at the height of the Cold War to ensure that the deliberations of states are well informed and evidence-based in the area of disarmament. And of course, today the landscape of disarmament is much different from what it was in 1980. And so we are conducting evidence-based policy research, we conduct multi-stakeholder engagement, and we want to make sure that we also facilitate dialogue where there is none, including on sensitive issues such as AI insecurity. So one of the priority areas of UNIDIR and our work is related to AI and autonomy in security and defense, including the military domain. And what we've noticed is that in the light of this technology's highly unique nature, we understood very quickly the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement and perspectives to obtain input on the implications of AI for international peace and security. So we saw the need to provide a platform for open, inclusive, and meaningful dialogue. We saw this need as well to warrant public trust and legitimacy, and to ensure that these discussions are not just a one-way discussion, but actually are coming both from the bottom up, but also from the top-down approach. We also want to make sure that we improve cross-disciplinary literacy, and so on and so forth. And you may see on the slides a number of very different incentives as to why the multi-stakeholder perspective is indeed important on this issue. And so that is why in March 2024, UNIDIR joined forces with Microsoft and in partnership with a series of other stakeholders on the establishment of the Roundtable for AI Security and Ethics, or RAISE. Our idea is to bring together experts and thought leaders from all around the world. So we have, for example, experts from China, from Russia, from the United States and United Kingdom, but also from Namibia, Ecuador, Kenya, India. And we really want to make sure that we bridge divides and we bridge the conversation when there is none on these issues of AI insecurity. We aspire to lay the foundation for robust global AI governance grounded in cooperation, transparency, and mutual learning, with the idea that we should overcome any sense of competitiveness or distrust, and where there is any need for building this trust, this is where it would be. We also would like to use RAISE to foster and facilitate compliance with international law and ethical norms in the light of their importance in the age of innovation, warfare and security and destabilization. And finally, we would like to complement and reinforce responsible and ethical AI practices in the security and defense domains, again, in an area where we are hoping to disrupt monopolies in the hands of the few, and to ensure that all voices are heard from all layers of society. So before we hear from our excellent panelists, I would like to open the floor to, I would like to provide an opportunity for both participants who are joining online, but also in person, to share their thoughts via Slido. So for those who are unfamiliar with Slido, and I may please ask our technicians to share the Slido presentation on screen. Thank you very much. First, before we start, I wanted to get your sense of what you think AI and international peace and security means for you. There is no right or wrong answer, and for that, what I would encourage you to do is to go on slido.com and put in the code 179812. For those who see the screen, use the QR code to join the conversation, and you will see a text box where you'll be able to provide your input on what you think AI and international peace and security means for you. And again, no right or wrong answer. It really is for us to understand your thoughts and your perspectives, and to really set the scene and see where things are at. And because of course it is important for us to share with you the work that we're doing, but it's also important for us to engage with the incredibly diverse IGF community to see what you think about this issue. So I will leave this poll open for a few minutes while you put in your contributions on what you think AI, international peace and security, means for you. And there should be the results showing in. Perhaps if I can ask our technicians to see if there's any input that has been added. So it is not showing on the screen, but, sorry, if you can please come back to Slido. Sorry, I'm bugging the technicians with my request, but I can see for those who are joined online that there's quite a few responses already. So we see, for example, censorship fake news that has been generated using AI. I see that AI could be used for good or for bad, and I really appreciate this balanced approach to looking at AI for international peace and security. I see issues related to data privacy and threats on human intelligence. I also see the use of AI in the military, law enforcement, and how they are used responsibly in their respective fields, facial recognition at borders, countering the proliferation of AI-enabled weapon systems, and I also see automated target selection. So a very wide range of responses, and please keep adding your responses to this question. May I please ask our colleagues from IT to share again Slido, and this time for the next question. Sorry, is it not working? Okay. 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 Oh, perfect. Now we can see them. So I think that this is great. Thank you very much to our IT team. And I've heard that there was a connectivity issue, so please bear with us as we navigate the hybrid space of discussions for this session. So now I'm going to get us to the second question. What should be the role of the multi-stakeholder community in the governance of AI and international peace and security? For those who are on Slido, it's the same link. If you just refresh your page, or it should be refreshed on its own, it should be refreshing on its own. If you can please add your responses, and they should start appearing one by one. And for those who have just joined us, may I encourage you to open slido.com using your laptop or your phone by scanning the QR code to provide your input on what you think should be the role of the multi-stakeholder community in the governance of AI and international peace and security. So I see already one response on agreeing on and implementing norms. I do encourage everyone to keep sharing their discussions and their reflections on what they think should be the role of the multi-stakeholder community, because that will also help us at UNIDER to inform our work on this and how to better engage with the multi-stakeholder community. So I see in big commitments, and I would love to hear your thoughts when we'll open the floor on what sort of commitments do you think that whether the multi-stakeholder community could have a role in. I also see industry and AI, and perhaps again when we'll open the floor for discussions, I would love to hear your thoughts on what they mean. And once again, for those who are joining us in the room physically, may I encourage you highly to come into the stage to join us in the middle to enable us to have a roundtable discussion so that it is interactive. I see a lot of input into the Slido, and I do see, for example, trust building, standards, proposed solutions, technical standards again, actionable legislation, responsible and peace. So I do appreciate you really putting a lot of input into these discussions. And now that we've had this little warm-up exercise, I will please ask our IT colleagues to get back to us to the PowerPoint for me to introduce once again our speakers for today's discussions. So the way it will work for the rest of the session, as we have 45 minutes, I will be providing the floor to 3 speakers who are joining us online for kickoff remarks, who are supposed to be introductory and generate more questions and answers, perhaps on very select issues related to AI, international peace and security. And then I will open the floor for those who are joining us online, but also in person, for a discussion on perhaps reactions to what you've heard, perhaps to elaborate a bit on the questions that you have, on the answers that you have shared with us, and also perhaps if you have any questions for our panelists and speakers who are joining us today. So again, for those who have just joined, we are joined virtually by 3 excellent speakers: Dr. Ginger He from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, Dr. Alexi Drew from the International Committee of the Red Cross, and Michael Karimi on Microsoft. For those who are joining in person, I assure you they're online and they should be appearing on the screen when it is their turn to speak. So now, may I please turn online and ask Ginger to provide us with her opening remarks. May I please ask the IT colleagues to show Ginger on the screen. Ginger, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yasmin. Very nice to be meeting you all. And thank you for the invitation. Always a pleasure to joining the conversation just to see your face on screens. I think the inclusive engagement across stakeholders is essential for the effective global governance of artificial intelligence. And the main reason will be that technological challenges, I believe, can often be addressed through technological solutions. However, the identification of the true nature of these challenges requires an interdisciplinary and multi-stakeholder approach. So such an inclusive approach ensures that a wide range of knowledge, expertise, and perspectives, often complementary in nature, are taken into account in shaping responsible and equitable understandings, norms, policies for AI development and deployment. So here I want to take the opportunity to really underscore the importance of the UN-sponsored platform, such as UNIDER's RISE that Jasmine just introduced, and the IGF and the Global Digital Compact, etc. So these platforms play a critical role in enabling multi-stakeholder engagements. What sets them apart from more state-centric mechanism is that it's their unique ability to provide neutral, depoliticized, and inclusive spaces So within those platforms, knowledge sharing and confidence building can take place beyond the constraints of geopolitical tensions and national interest, allowing for more constructive, balanced, and therefore more promising outcomes. But of course, one dilemma that I want to point out is that such platforms, especially like Rise, do face funding issues and questions about how to make the project more sustainable. I remember the first time I attending Rise, and Yasmin was sharing the concern that this project should be more sustainable and stuff like that. I do believe that Yasmin and Michael has done a great job in supporting this program, but I do believe that this should be a more collective effort for all of us to bring resources and contribute to this project and these communities. So Yasmin also asked me to provide some concrete example for how AI foster international peace and security. So one of my recent project is about AI and satellite remote sensing. So satellite remote sensing has been increasingly recognized as a critical tool for international peace and security. In recent years, there has been a growing interest in applying AI and machine learning to enhance analytical efficiency of satellite imageries. So one example is Amnesty International, in collaboration with a company called Element AI, as well as almost 29,000 volunteers. So they developed tools to automatically analyze satellite imagery for monitoring conflicts in Darfur. So this is just one of the many examples of how AI can empower satellite imagery and benefits for international peace, security, and non-proliferation missions, etc. Of course, I always care about the challenges. So one potential challenges, as my previous research shows, that is there's always a challenge of adversarial attacks in such systems, which will make the system more vulnerable and our discussion more interesting and challenges. So I will stop for now, and I will be happy to answer questions. Yasmin?
Thank you very much, Ginger, for this very short and crisp, but also very provocative introductory remarks. And I do appreciate you noting as well the difficulty that the UN is currently facing on fundraising. And of course, the UNIDER, as a voluntary funded institute, we do rely on voluntary contributions. So I do appreciate you noting as well the dire situation that we're facing today to enable such dialogue from happening. But also, I also appreciate you sharing the importance of AI to enhance the ability to analyze and to monitor conflicts, including by civil society organizations. So it does show the potential of AI to enhance international peace and security, while of course being balanced by the risks that may resurface, including with regards to adversarial attacks on these AI technologies. So I think that one key aspect that you also shared with us is the importance of engaging all kinds of stakeholders, and we're very fortunate today to be joined by Michael Karimian from Microsoft. Michael, may I please ask now that you provide us with your kickoff remarks, particularly to see what do you think is the role of industries in supporting responsible AI practices for international peace and security? Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Yasmin. It's a pleasure to join you all. And thank you, Yasmin, not just for facilitating today's discussion, but of course for being an essential partner in the work of the Roundtable for AI Security and Ethics. As we've heard, and as I think we already know, AI is and will rapidly reshape international security dynamics, and the governance frameworks needed to ensure its responsible use urgently require quite robust multi-stakeholder engagement, just as Ginger outlined. And industry in particular has a critical role to play obviously as developers and deployers of AI technology, but also, I think, as proactive stakeholders in establishing norms and standards and safeguards to mitigate risks associated with AI in security contexts. And the Roundtable for AI Security and Ethics has already quite clearly highlighted that while states and international organizations are vital in setting norms and regulations, industry in particular has quite practical contributions to governance, which I think can't be overstated. So, for example, industry actors often are the first to encounter and understand AI risks and vulnerabilities, in part due to their direct involvement in developing and deploying these technologies. That can put industry players in a unique position to provide expertise on technical feasibility, operational impacts, and risk mitigation strategies, which are, of course, essential for effective governance. And through RAISE, industry stakeholders, including Microsoft, have already identified several key contributions that can be made. Firstly, transparency and accountability. Industry must develop and adhere to clear standards that ensure AI systems used in security applications are transparent in their capabilities and limitations, with accountability mechanisms clearly articulated. And that involves quite robust documentation practices, as well as continuous monitoring and the capability to audit AI systems, which together, I think, provide greater predictability and trust. Second, and relatedly, is the topic of due diligence. The Secretary General's upcoming report and also ongoing UN General Assembly discussions will likely continue to underscore the importance of due diligence, because industry actors have a responsibility to implement robust due diligence processes across the AI lifecycle, from design and development through to deployment and eventual decommissioning. And this aligns closely with lifecycle management approaches already being emphasized by both UNIDIR and the ICRC in its submission to the Secretary General's upcoming report. Third, there's the topic of proactive collaboration. Industry should actively contribute technical expertise and capacity building initiatives, particularly in regions where regulatory frameworks are still emerging. Effective governance, of course, requires global equity in knowledge and resources, and so initiatives such as RAISE, but also REAIM, the responsible AI in the military domain process, we see them promoting practical and inclusive governance strategies, which serve as a strong foundation. And industry collaboration through those platforms can, of course, further amplify these efforts. I think on the topic of reducing disparities and capacity building and knowledge transfer, industry really does have a significant technical and expertise resources that are needed to support governance, civil society, and international organizations, particularly those from the global south, in understanding and assessing and mitigating AI risks, because strengthening global capacity is really key to ensuring inclusive governance and avoiding exacerbating already existing inequalities in security capabilities. I guess if we look ahead, industry's engagement should continue to be structured, it should continue to be sustained, and it should, of course, be substantive. And this means participating in and supporting frameworks established through the United Nations and other multilateral venues, as well as initiatives such as RAISE to collectively shape responsible AI governance in security. And I think that we can ensure that our collaborative efforts lead not only to innovative, but enhanced global stability, resilience, and trust. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Michael, for for a very comprehensive overview of what you think should be the role of industries in promoting and enhancing responsible AI practices for international peace and security, both as developers but also as deployers. And I do appreciate your remarks as well, your point on the industries needing to be proactive actors to mitigate the risks and harms that may ensue from these technologies. I also note from your remarks the importance of implementing feasible and effective risk mitigation mechanisms throughout the life cycle of technologies for AI and for international peace and security. And we're very fortunate to be joined by Dr. Alexey Drew from the International Committee of the Red Cross, who's been our expert within the RAISE, who's been promoting relentlessly on the importance of a lifecycle management approach to the governance of AI in security. So now may I please ask Alexey to come to the floor and also share her remarks on this point. Thank you very much, Alexey.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, and thank you, Michael, for setting the stage for me. It makes it a lot easier for me to continue my crusade to make lifecycle management a feature that everyone is aware of, and be more aware of the necessity of why it needs to be approached and understood, and actually engaged with, rather than as a secondary feature. And that secondariness is actually one of the key reasons why lifecycle management is critical, because we've been talking about governance quite a bit. We've been talking about the need to be responsible and ethical in how we design, develop, and deploy these systems. But governance is not something that can be added on after the fact. It's not a afterthought. It needs to be something which is designed to fit in each stage of a life cycle. Now, for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to break life cycles down into very simple segments. In this case, we're going to talk about the development stage, the validation stage, and the deployment stage. And I thought it would be helpful if I gave you a particular series of risks with hypothetical contexts where those things are actually producing risks now, so we can understand why governance at each stage is important. So one of these risks that I see them, and the ICRC approaches them, is that the trend that we have tried to engage towards the localization of aid and assistance is reversed through the utilization of systems which are by their default and their design not local. So for example, at the development stage, you might use data which is taken from the global north, train a model which is designed to be deployed in the global south. It doesn't reflect the realities. A predictive model, for example, based on this for delivery of humanitarian aid, is going to prioritize the delivery of aid to certain groups as opposed to others based upon the data that has been selected for it, which is not applicable to the local context. And that's going to effectively create a compounding problem. At the validation stage, localization can also create problems if it's not properly taken into account with regards to localization. If you test something outside of the local context in which you intend to deploy it, you're not actually testing for the scenario and the circumstance and the context which the thing is going to be used in. So your ability to be sure that it's delivering as expected is undermined. You're ignoring the social, economic, political dynamics of the context in which something is going to be ultimately deployed in. So our clean test beds, which might be suitable for some circumstances, are not likely to be suitable for those if you try and use the same system in multiple places. At the deployment stage, for example, we might be using aid algorithms that worked in one context that systematically exclude marginalized communities in another. So we might have a refugee processing system which, trained on one population, works perfectly fine but fails catastrophically when applied in a different, with slightly different linguistic characteristics, social characteristics, economic needs and requirements. When you take these across, these localized issues at the development stage, the validation and deployment stage, this is a compounding of problems and risks which you can't then remove by a set of governance which is attached to the end of a life cycle. It's something which has to be addressed at each of these stages to ensure that these risks are avoided and not compounded. There's also the problem of inscrutability. Now, inscrutability is almost the opposite of transparency and explainability that Michael mentioned earlier. But sometimes inscrutability is a design choice that takes place at a certain point or several points in the life cycle. At the development stage, rather than choosing something which is open source, understood as a model, you might choose a proprietary algorithm, which is more niche, more sophisticated, but a complex neural network selected because it seems more appropriate and more complicated, when actually a simpler, more explainable model could do the job, is going to introduce inscrutability into the system at the development stage. Further on, at the stage where you're actually validating or generating a model, you're then going to create a system which is so complex that not only can the end users, the subjects of the system, not understand decisions being made, but the users themselves might not be able to, particularly if these users haven't been the designers, they simply purchased these systems from those who were asked to procure it for them. What's the real world impact of this? Well, it means that humanitarians or aid suppliers on the ground can't explain to individuals why the decisions are being made as they are. They can't explain why aid isn't being delivered to one group while it is to another. They can't explain why some resources are available in one place or not another. And that undermines trust in both the humanitarian sector, but also in the systems being used, which further means that in the long term, this life cycle of redeployment and redesign is going to have less than an effective impact on the very communities and the very peace building that it's designed to develop. And the final point that I'd raise is that life cycles are often, and we use the term cycle, but what do we mean by cyclical? And what does that actually imply to how things are used? Well, the problem is that if you look at a life cycle as a series of stages that are begun at one end and produce a tool at the other, and then perhaps cycle round again, it seems like a conveyor belt. It can be seen and operated on operationally by the designers, procurers, and the ultimate deployers of these systems as a series of checkboxes that you move from one stage to the other once certain things have been completed. But what that means is that we have, rather than a series of checks and balances and means of ensuring that these risks are not compounded, we have a series of things which are simply checked off as complete without sufficient evidence to the fact, without the ability to understand, is this system suitable for what it's being used for? And when that's then recycled and the requirements might be changed and this tool is deployed in a different context for a different purpose, then we find ourselves further compounding the issues that we saw before. So what I would like to say is what we need to be aware of with this life cycle, finally taking away from this, is that if we are to ensure that these systems are being used in a manner which is humane, ethical, and principled, and adding to our security and building peace, rather than the creating or recreating rather the conditions that have led to insecurity, unethical practice, and a risk to both civilians, combatants, and other already highly impacted and at-risk individuals, we need to ensure that not only do we have a shared understanding of how these tools are made on the different stages of their life cycle, we need to understand and come up with a means of technical, ethical, and humanitarian governance which intersect with all of these stages effectively. And I'll leave it there and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Alexi, for, again, this very comprehensive overview of why the lifecycle management approach to the governance of AI is indeed important. I particularly like the way that you ended the discussions and your remarks by noting that this is a prerequisite to ensure that these technologies indeed will build peace instead of exacerbating the sources of insecurity and instability. So on that note, we have a bit around 20 minutes, I would say, for an open discussion. I would highly encourage for those who are both in the room in Oslo, but also who are joining us virtually, to ask questions to our panelists, but also building on the Slido discussions that we had earlier, where we collected your responses of what AI, international peace and security means, but also the role of the multi-stakeholder community. I would encourage you to also take the floor to elaborate a bit more on these answers. But also, if you have anything else to add based on, for example, we heard from Alex the importance of local contexts. How is AI being deployed and used, for example, in your respective regions or states or your organization to build peace and to enhance international peace and security? So on that note, I would like to open the floor now for those who are joining in person and online. For those who are online, I will keep an eye on the Zoom. But for those who are joining in person, I believe there's a microphone on the side for those who are joining from the floor, or perhaps from those who are joining on the center table. If they would like to take the floor, I think there are microphones in front of you. So on that note, I'm opening the floor now and perhaps give a few seconds as well for you to collect your thoughts or your questions. The gentleman on my left, I think you have a question. Please introduce yourself and share your name, where you're coming from, and also if you have a question, if it is directed specifically at a speaker, please do so as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Francis Alaneme. I'm from the .ng domain name registry, and so it's just more of a comment. I know AI is widely used, and AI is something that a lot of persons are jumping into, and it's flying everywhere. A lot of contents are generated with AI, and I think so. Part of the things that the AI adoption is driving at is trying to make imaginary things come real, and I think part of the algorithm should look at ways to actually make AI generated contents have more of a signature that, okay, so people can actually easily say, or people can actually identify what AI is generated and what humans actually generated. When you look at some video contents, you see that a lot of, there are video contents that you see and you will think they are real. And, those kind of contents can be used to pass some kind of false information, that can be used to actually instigate some kind of violence in some places, where you see some kind of contents that are actually not, culture friendly, or something that can actually instigate some kind of, thoughts in mind of people. So I think there should be more of, that kind of a signature, or that kind of, thing to identify AI generated contents and human contents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for outlining the importance of ensuring some sort of signature, or at least a means to verify what is AI generated, what is not AI generated, and perhaps the security implications of not being able to differentiate between the two. I see that we have a hand raised virtually by Bagus Chatmiko, who I know is joining us from very late from Indonesia. Perhaps may I ask our IT technicians to display him on the screen, and Bagus, please, you have the floor now. Thank you very much. Bagus, if you can please unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you would like to intervene.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I don't
Although
know
we cannot
whether
see you, I'm so
my
sorry. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Oh,
Perfect.
there you go. Sorry for the connection and also the technical issues. So I see very familiar faces in this conference, and also would like to bring some concern, and also would like to maybe bring some question to the panelists also, in the way that I'm working in the defense sector, and AI is being used exponentially. And I also talked about this with during the ICRC conference virtually last week, if I'm not mistaken. And I bring the concern about how AI is being used in a way that some of the commander or the user within the military domain is unaware of the possibility that AI might be corrupted during the use, like what we call as the emergent misalignment, or there's also the misalignment with the system itself. And I also would like to bring the concern about the possibility of the maybe it's not possibility, this the tendency of AI being psychopath in a way that AI would also maybe provide the answers that the users would like to bring or would like to seek. And being in the battlefield, that kind of tendency would be very, in a way, very risky and maybe dangerous, and how they can actually uh, misalign the user or the commander in the battlefield in taking the, what you may call it, like the decision that might increase the risk for the humanity and also for the civilian population. And this is goes to my question: how would you all maybe provide the what you call is like the attention and maybe the focus on how the AI is being used, especially in the military domain? This is for all the panelists. And how would you maybe more encourage more into the use of AI, responsible AI within the military domain? Because if I relate it to the humanitarian law, somehow in the fog of war, in the condition of uncertainty, mostly commander would like to see the quick answers provided by AI DSS, and they just ignore the possibility or the the existence of law or humanitarian law in this case. Goes back to you, Yasmin. Thank you.
Thank you, Vagus. Perhaps may I please ask that you also introduce yourself for those who are not familiar with your work and where you're coming from.
Oh, yeah. Sorry for not introducing myself. So my name is Commander Bagus Chadmiko, and I'm actually an Indonesian Navy officer, and I also a researcher in AI and information warfare that bring me to the attention that the use of AI within the military domain and defense sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bagus. I see a gentleman here who would like to ask a question or perhaps share some comments, and then I'll get back to our panelists for some reactions or answers to the questions. Gentlemen, please.
Good evening, everybody. Allow me to raise a very short question in the beginning. Who is responsible for the mitigation of AI risks? This is a very short question for me. Is it the high-tech big companies who are creating AI and developing AI? Because it is not in the hand of the government, especially in the developing countries right now. So let me have the big issue here. While I'm following the rapid development, advancement of AI, especially in fields which are related to security, I am terrorized. Because I am not going to mention or to name any country now, but we can see how AI is being used in current ongoing wars, and the victims behind the use of AI technology in autonomous weapon, for example, how civilians are being killed without accountability. So for this reason, looking from a developing country's perspective, which have nothing to do in their hands right now, it is all in the hands of the big tech companies which exist in the powerful countries. So this is my issue here, how we are going to mitigate ourselves this risk. Thank you.
May I please ask that you introduce yourself? Sorry, can you please introduce yourself in the microphone just so that we know who you are and where you're coming from?
My name is Judge Adel Magid. I am judge at the Supreme Court of Egypt, and I am also an honorary professor of law at Durham University, the UK. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. So in the interest of time, I realize that we have 10 to 15 minutes left. So I just want to make sure and check in the room virtually or online, virtually or in person, if there's any further questions or comments or remarks for our panelists or to add to the discussions today. If not, I know that Alexi, you've also put in the chat that there is an ongoing project on adding signatures to AI-generated content, the Content Authenticity Initiative, which you might be interested in. And perhaps, Alexi, you'll be able to elaborate a bit more. Before I give the floor back to our panelists, I do note a question from Rowan Wilkinson from Chatham House. Hi, Rowan. Many policymakers are discussing the importance of AI openness in civilian contexts, including in meeting safety commitments through OSS and community oversight. Does the panel foresee a policy shift around openness in the AI, peace and security domain? So we do have quite a few questions and remarks and calls for reflections. So we had a question surrounding AI authenticity and the implications of not knowing what is generated or not, and the security and the destabilizing effects. We had a question from Bagus on the commander and perhaps some of the human-machine interaction in the battlefield, and perhaps also how do we make sure that the use of AI remains indeed responsible in the hands of the commander, particularly under situations of pressure, such as in the battlefield. We had the question of who should be responsible for the mitigation of risks of AI, particularly in the light of ongoing conflicts today and the implications of civilians. And finally, we have a question on openness in the AI peace and security domains. So perhaps may I ask, in the interest of time, Ginger to start us off with 3 to 4 minutes. Please feel free to answer any questions you may think or any other element that you would like to add based on what you've heard today. Ginger, please, you have the floor.
Thank you for your questions. So first, the question is from Bagus. I think the first things we need to do is knowledge sharing, because I assume that in military, when you deploy an AI system, you developed it first and as a project, and you deploy it. So many times, based on my experience from the civilian field and industries, many times the one who make the decision whether to use, deploy, or complete the project may not always be the one who understands the technologies. So knowledge sharing is very important. Transparency is important. Those people who make the decisions needs to understand the technology perspective. And also, the second point I want to make is the importance of incentives. It is very important for the militaries to understand that AI is not only a force multiplier, but also a threat multiplier. It is not only about the risk of civilians, it's also about increasing risk of your own combatants when you have a poorly designed, unverified AI system with uncertainties, and you cannot be confident about it, and there's a whole black box. So this kind of incentive is very important. With this understanding, I believe many militaries will be more incentivized to improve their systems. A quick answer for the second question: who's responsible for AI governance? I think everyone. Like I'm sure Michael will talk more about from the industry point of view, but I do sense that everyone is responsible for raising the voice, being sensitive about the importance of AI governance, incentivize or promoting a dialogue about the AI risks. And the third question about AI openness, I'm actually not sure what is the AI openness, because if you're talking about openness about the algorithm, I think it's very difficult, because when we're in the industry, when we go for due diligence or technological scouting, we ask the company, what is it? What's your core technology? They told us they were likely to tell us it's their own IP, and they will not be able to reveal it. But look, we have a good system and it works perfectly. Just believing our results. This is what happened. So if you're talking about openness about AI algorithm, I have a huge question mark about the feasibilities and possibility of this kind of solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger, for your very sharp response, and also the fact that you're actually joining us from very far, and it's very late that you're at home. So thank you very much for this. Michael, would you like to intervene now?
Thank you, Yasmin. Happy to do so. I should flag, Zoom keeps telling me that my internet connection is unstable. So if I pause at any moment, that'll be the reason why. In answer to the questions, Francis's question on AI signature, I appreciate the question. I think one way of thinking about this is, are there specific use cases where we really need AI signatures? Or would we be comfortable with other use cases where we don't need them? I suspect that's possibly the direction we will go in. But of course, the proliferation of AI solutions means that there'll always be solutions or actors who would circumvent that anyway, but that doesn't downplay the importance of having AI signatures in the first place. To Bagus's question on emergent misalignment and AI-supported DSS, I think Bagus, your question really points to something which we've certainly discussed in the context of the Roundtable for AI Security and Ethics. And that's the challenge which exists at the moment in having access to meaningful and trustworthy use cases to understand in very effective ways actually how AI is being used. I think the academic community, civil society, industry, governments, actually at the moment we are relying on a number of examples which partly come from hearsay or just perhaps aren't that reflective of how AI is being used in security domains. But I'm hopeful that as AI is further adopted in various security domains, transparency around use cases will improve, and then we'll be better able to understand implications of them. To the question from our colleague from Egypt / the University of Durham, Jinja's right, who has responsibility? Everyone. From a human rights perspective, of course, states have the state duty to protect, respect, and fulfill human rights. Industry has a corporate responsibility to respect human rights, and individuals have a right to remedy when their rights have been harmed. Focusing just specifically on the role of industry, what that means is that all companies under the UN Guiding Principles on Business Human Rights have a responsibility to ensure that their products and services are not being used in ways to facilitate or contribute to serious human rights abuses. And this means that any engagement with a government, a Ministry of Defense, armed forces, especially in the context of ongoing armed conflict, or where there are credible allegations of international law violations, must be subject to rigorous due diligence, clear red lines on misuse, and where risks cannot be mitigated, there should be a refusal to provide or maintain support. And actually, that's not new. This has been an established position for a number of years now. What, of course, matters there is implementation. And lastly, to Rowan's question, yes, I would hope so that we will see more openness. And actually, one example of that is the re-aim process, which I mentioned earlier, responsible AI in the military domain process. Last year hosted in South Korea, and in the next 6-12 months will be hosted in Spain. And so anyone in the audience, stakeholders who are interested in this should certainly keep an eye on the re-aim process.
Thank you very much, Michael, for this and the sort of the importance of differentiating, of course, principles, but also actual implementation, and the importance as well of human rights and providing a framework to ensure that everyone is indeed held accountable, but also to ensure that civilians have a right to remedy, including in the context of AI for international peace and security. Finally, Alexei, would you like to have any concluding remarks and responses to any of the questions raised?
Thank you. I'll rattle through these nice and quickly in the interest of giving people their time. I'd like to start with a silver lining to the signatures and the kind of demarking inauthentic content or AI-generated content from human-generated content. As someone who used to work in arms control, there's a great thing to kind of bear in note that every time a new threat arises or a new innovation creates a threat, it's very quick for a counter to be developed against it. And that is just as true in the identification of inauthentically generated or machine-generated content as it is with any other risk of this type that we've seen before. So I'm encouraged to see that it's not just the CAI that exists in this space. There are a number of initiatives coming with technical and non-technical means to kind of give us the means of, as Michael says, in critical circumstances, being able to identify when content has been generated as opposed to when it has been created and is authentic. On the question from Bagos reference, compliance and commanders component, this is actually part of what I was referencing when I was talking about the need to ensure that governance, both ethical, legal, and economic, is built in at every stage of the design of life cycle. If we take IHL as part of that governance, a system should be designed, trained, tested, authenticated and verified with the data selected with its need to be compliant with IHL in mind. If it isn't, that's when you're introducing the risks that something could be designed which is either completely incompatible with IHL or is open to being, or is possible for it to be used in a manner which is non-compliant. If you actually treat the life cycle effectively in how you incorporate IHL across it rather than just in a section of it or in, say, the assurance stage, or treat it as a checkbox exercise, then you can actually constrain the risks of that going wrong. That being said, there are other components to that. The fact that any user of a system should be trained to understand what it can and what it cannot do What does it look like when it fails? What are the circumstances which have led to its failure in testing? What influences its level of accuracy, so they can make informed decisions as to how much and whether, in fact, to trust an AI-based tool system or weapon system, be it a decision-making system, strategic or tactical, or be it a direct weapon system. And it should also mean that in some cases these tools simply aren't used because it's understood, because of how these systems have been designed with IHL baked into each part of it, that in the context you're seeking to apply them, they simply cannot be compliant with IHL. On the subject of trust around these tools and how particularly LLMs, some of them have been found to be very non-critical of their human users and how that might influence it. Yes, that is a problem. They're not designed to be critical and to push back on their human users. They're designed to be supportive administrative assistants that say yes a lot. And that should be something which is understood as a potential failing and implications to how a military should design, create doctrine, and then deploy a tool. Moving quickly onto the who owns it, where's the responsibility? I agree with both previous speakers, Jinji and Michael. Everyone owns the responsibility here, but there are levers, despite the complex ownership structures between the private sector, the public sector, the global north and south, and those with less seeming control, that everyone has a lever they can use here. Be it the taking part in globalized standard setting organizations, technical or non-technical, or be it in procurement strategies and procurement standards. If governance is critical, IHL, ethical, social, and economic, then it should be a condition of procurement from governments to suppliers. So then even if they don't own the system or the services required to operate the system, say it's AI as a service, the thing has been designed to fit these standards and it's legally necessary to do so to meet the procurement standards. Finally, on a point on openness, I'm going to try and be positive. There's a bit of negativity here. I think we're at a point where innovation is being posed as a solution to our increasing state of insecurity and a risk to peace. And it's being posited as a zero-sum game between innovation and security, or insecurity and constraint on innovation. That is not the case. You can, in fact, have security and innovation with adherence to values and governance, which protects all individuals from all societies and delivers the economic and social value that we're trying to seek here. But it's important that we push back on those that are trying to stress that zero-sum dynamic between those two. And I'll leave it there, hopefully, on a semi-positive note.
Thank you very much, indeed, Alexi, for ending us on a semi-positive note, but also for for Ginger to also add a point on the fact that Chinese social media also add signatures to AI-generated content. And I think that also adds to the importance of collective responsibility to ensure responsible AI and international peace and security. And I do know the importance of incentivization, noted by Ginger. I know the importance of human rights as a framework, compliance with IHL, and yeah, on that hopefully positive note that we're ending this workshop. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today, either online or in person. Please join me in giving a round of applause to our speakers online. Thank you very much.